Well, so good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining our session. As the title implies, we would like to talk a bit about some of the things we can do and cannot do with regards to high availability, but also load balancing, fault tolerance within XenDesktop 7.6 as it is today. We'll also have a look at some of the stuff that Citrix has already announced, some of the things to come. We'll have a look at what we can do within 6.5 or IMA, which will sort of function as a reference throughout the presentation for today as well. We've also thought about, well, what's still missing, what would we like to see built back into the products or new features. So we put on our own thinking caps as well, so to speak. And of course, we would also like to know from you if you have any suggestions or ideas on the topics, perhaps. So if you do, please share, the more the better, basically. First, a quick look at the agenda. So we'll start out with who we are in just a minute, and then continue with a short introduction on, well, the topic for today. I'll talk a bit about what we can do with regards to HA load balancing within storefront, web interface, so on. Wilco will do the same for all the things possible within, well, FMA, the delivery controllers. If time permits, hopefully, I will do a piece on connection leasing, database stuff, and then, well, if time, then PVS. Hopefully, we'll get far enough. So, well, as for me, in a nutshell, my name is Bas van Kaan. I'm a senior management consultant or technical consultant in the Netherlands. I work for a company called Detron, Dutch company based in the Netherlands as well. In IT for about 16 years now, or just over 16 years, and most of my professional work experience comes from Microsoft-related projects, which I've been doing for the first 10 to 12 years. And I started focusing on the Citrix portfolio, a bit more specific, a couple of years ago, late 2012, early 2013, when I also started writing blogging on well, my own personal website, blog.basvankaan.com, which I'm pretty active as well. Enjoy spending time with my kids, love a good run, like this morning with a couple of guys, staying fit in general. And occasional speaker here at E2E, spoke before in Berlin. Also had a couple of the Dutch Citrix user group meetings at the Virtual Expo a couple of months ago. Of course, I'm on Twitter, like we all are, so if you aren't connected, let's do that on there as well. And that's basically, well, me in a nutshell. So, Luca.
And for people who don't know me, not much I think, I recognize most of the people in the audience. I'm Luca Murat, I'm a freelance consultant in the Netherlands. I don't think things it's not on it. Let's do it this way. No problem. I'm not on the video again. Perfect. I'm a freelance consulting in the Netherlands. I have my own website. Probably you know me of that one. I'm also on alternativeadmin.com. I'm a steering group member of the DUCUC, and I'm a CTP, professional, Microsoft MVP, and according to Alex, I'm a V expert, but I'm not a V expert at this moment, so I filled in the application form, maybe I will be next year or something like that. Why not? Really quick, there is a difference between load balancing and failover, but I don't think that I have to explain it very in this group. We are trying to do much about the failover stuff, but sometimes we need to add the load balancing part as well, because some things they are really close to each other because the components are using the same mechanisms. It's a different methodology, it's a different way of working. In this audience we are not going to talk about this. 2 is 1, 1 is not, of course. How small the environment is, you need at least 2 delivery controllers to solve all that kind of stuff. Yeah. For this kind of audience we don't think we need to go into that in detail, because you already know that.
Yeah, so there are situations, unfortunately, where having multiple sites or multiple co-locations and then spreading your physical architecture over those sites, well, do not help in keeping your business online or your users productive when a disaster happens or some sort of catastrophe happens or whatever. And then, of course, I'm talking about a big flood, for example, an earthquake or something like that. And then basically the only thing that will help is having multiple co-locations and then spread out throughout the nation or country or whatever, dozens of miles in between, perhaps a couple of hundred even, and otherwise it basically comes down to, well, hoping that your infrastructure isn't damaged that heavily that it will bring down the company basically. Fortunately, these types of events do not happen that much, and there are still, well, a lot of reasons, of course, to consider implementing or using multiple sites, spreading your physical architecture over those sites. Because, for example, floods or water damage within your data center can be very local as well, of course. And then
And
if
they're
you have,
smiling.
They don't have to work, that's why.
so having a second co-location, for example, even if it's just a few miles down the road, will help immensely if something like this would ever happen. And the same applies to a fire, for example, or a power outage, or well, something similar. So multiple reasons to consider implementing HA load balancing and things like that.
Quick introduction what we are going to do per component, as Bas already mentioned a little bit. We are going to look looking quickly to the past, present, future, and we have kind of thinking cap on what should be done. What's the past? Well, we're talking about 6.5, and most people are used to that, and are migrating to 7 and missing features or looking another way, because XenDesktop 7 is completely different than 6.5. So if you talk about the past, it's about 6.5, web interface, that kind of stuff. You are here.
Thank you.
XenDesktop 7.6, probably for the most familiar. 6.5, 6.6, something like that. The future, XenDesktop 7.7, maybe 8, I don't know. We never know. And we have thinking cap, so that's not available, that's in our minds, and probably just the most fun part of the presentation.
So yeah, if we start out with web interface with regards to HA, load balancing, things like that, we have a few options, of course. We, because it's still widely used today, maybe even more than storefront even, it's still supported, of course. So we can add in multiple farms. For those farms, we can add in multiple XML servers, which we can then, for example, load balance or configure in an HA setup. We also have the possibility to manually edit the web interface.conf file, for example, to configure perhaps one or multiple disaster recovery farms, which would then sit idle, basically, and would only become active if the primary farm or farms were not reachable for whatever reason. And a couple of years ago, they came up with, well, sort of a add-on to web interface, specifically written for web interface, and with them I mean Citrix, of course. Specifically written for web interface and XenDesktop deployments, because what happened was a couple of the bigger customers, or a lot actually, they complained that they had issues with SQL PVS, which would bring down their whole XenDesktop farm. Yeah, well, basically, so they had to come up with a solution for that. And one of the first things they did is they came up with a pod architecture, which basically means setting up and configuring multiple farms, multiple XenDesktop farms, identically configured, with having your own SQL and PVS instances, so that if users would be connected to one pod, it would break for whatever reason, then they would be able to connect up to, well, the pod's still active. But that also introduced some challenges. For example, if you add in multiple farms within web interface, then and you give users access to the desktops on those farms, then the user would see multiple icons, for example, so they needed to come up with a way to aggregate those icons into one. They also needed to come up with a way to sort of smart load balance the users over those pods, over those farms. And with smart load balancing, I mean you could use the NetScaler, but users should also be able to reconnect to disconnected sessions or to check for existing sessions and connect to those if they're there. Also, they wanted to check the existing load at that time on the farm so that the user would be connected to the least loaded farm at that time. So that's what they did with this tweak, this pod tweak, this add-on for web interface, again specifically for XenDesktop. Aggregation was then possible, and as soon as a user would click the icon, then first it would check if there was an active or disconnected session available on one of the farms, one of the pods. If so, then the user would be connected or reconnected. It would also check the load on each farm using PowerShell code, and then the user would be connected to the least loaded farm at that time. And if that wouldn't work for whatever reason, it would continue to keep trying to connect up to the least loaded farm after that, until a successful connection was or would be established. So a nice add-on, and if we look at storefront today, 3.0, then we basically have all that functionality, features and services now built in natively, but we do have to manually still configure, or need to configure manually the web.conf file to, well, make use of these services and to configure them, which is, well, can be hard to do. And as you might know, about 8 or 9 or 10 days ago, Citrix released the 3.1 technology preview, which with regards to multi-site store configurations now makes it possible, should make it possible to, for example, map users to deployments and also configure load balancing between those deployments from the graphical user interface, which was missing, of course. So what I did was, of course, I installed 3.1, had a look at the graphical user interface, and I also opened up the edocs pages that go with it. And the edocs pages told me that it should be possible to map users to multiple deployments and then also configure load balancing over those deployments and even load balancing between the delivery controllers within those deployments. So when I had a look within the GUI of the 3.1 tech preview, I couldn't find those options because the only thing I was able to do was map users to delivery controllers and not deployments. And also there wasn't an option for configuring load balancing at all. So I contacted Citrix. I also contacted Ingmar, by the way. I also used the, sorry?
He's Citrix.
He's Citrix, yes.
He's Citrix, yeah.
Yeah.
He's special Citrix. Special Citrix.
He's secret Citrix.
Yeah. So, and also use the feedback forms on the edocs side to let them know that the functionality, well, there's sort of a mismatch between the edocs pages and what's physically available within the GUI. So I saw that a couple of days ago, they changed it now back to map users to a delivery controller. And that if you want to configure load balancing using the tech preview, of course, you still need to manually edit the web.conf file. So it's not that hard to imagine now, of course, knowing this, that in a future tech preview release or in the final product, we will be able to map users to deployments and so on and so forth. So it's good to know. But no matter what we use to configure these types of setups, it doesn't really matter if you do it through the GUI or manually editing the web.conf file, for example, because the result will be the same. And this enables us to do multiple things, basically. For example, we can have multiple locations, and within each location we can have multiple sites or multiple deployments, as Citrix like to refer to them, which is basically just a XenApp or XenDesktop site, of course. And then each location can be separately configured from each other. So, for example, in location 1 we can have multiple sites and then map the users to those sites and configure it in a load balance fashion. So users would connect up to the sites within location 1 would be load balanced over those sites, and then if one site would fail, they would be continued to be load balanced over the remaining sites, for example. We can do the same for location 2, configure it in a failover fashion. Then users would be mapped to those deployments, connect up to site 1. If site 1 fails, of course they would be able to connect up to site 2. Pretty basic stuff up till now. Taking it a step further, for example, if all the deployments within location 2 would be unreachable for whatever reason, then we have a few options actually, because we could use the sites within location 1 as sort of a failover possibility, sort of an HA, so that users would be, or users would connect to the sites within location 1, would be load balanced and so on and so forth. Or we could use the DR site configured up in location 3. Or if both locations would fail, then we would still have the location 3 DR site, for example. And of course, you can mix and match, and there are multiple configurations possible. So when I started thinking about these features, I thought, well, is there anything that I'm missing now with regards to services, functionalities, features, whatever? And well, basically not. The only thing I could think of was this needs to be built into the GUI. And of course, this was a couple of weeks ago when the tech preview was still not released. So I thought, well, needs to be built into Studio, preferably. If that's not possible, then perhaps it could be on short term built into the storefront web GUI, which is a separate tool, separate download, of course, which you might have heard of before. Or at least make it possible to open the web.conf file within Studio, like we can do with PowerShell, for example, today. Well, with the tech preview and future releases, this will be sort of obsolete. So yeah. Doesn't really matter. So the only thing I could think of next was the load balance mechanism that is used now within storefront, but also web interface to load balance users over multiple deployments, multiple sites. It's sort of based on a round robin fashion, so it's evenly distributed, you could say. And I thought, well, maybe they could reuse the code, which was used for the hot tweak I was talking about earlier. Or perhaps modify it or come up with something similar to check the load on each deployment and then map users based to the least loaded farm at that time. So that's basically what I have to say with regards to storefront web interface. And if you guys don't have any comments on this or suggestions or questions, then we'll call you on.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, I'm on. Wow. Cool. Yeah. Bas talked a lot about how storefront stuff with multiple sites. That's pretty nice if you're a big company, but what I see in the Netherlands is that making more sites is making it more complex. You need initial databases, you need to make different configurations. And what we see in the Netherlands a lot is that they're using the load balancing policies with work groups in the 6.5 version. That's pretty nice. You can make some nice groups and you can have a priority. So you can say this is the first group, this second group. You can make, using filters, you can make different load balancing policies. So you can make an active and active standby. Vision for that kind of stuff pretty easy. And you can add the working group to the service, to the application, purpose desktop, and you're done. So it's a pretty nice method. And unfortunately, it's not available in XenDesktop 7 at the moment. For active passive, there is something. At the moment, you have PowerShell command. Neil has written an excellent blog about it, where you can publish a published application to one or more delivery groups with a priority. PowerShell command there, over there, and you can see it in the GUI that you have more delivery groups configured for that. So that's doable. It's the same way, a little bit like the working groups and load balancing policies, but this is only available for published applications. For published desktop, there is nothing at the moment. You can make more desktops with PowerShell command. Yes.
If you tweak the storefront so that your desktops will be under applications, will that solve anything?
No, you can only make one desktop per delivery group, and the names in the delivery groups cannot be the same. So you're a little bit in front of me, but as I'm doing here, the only thing you can do is making two delivery groups, give the thing a name like Failover desktop or something. I think it's, yes. And what you can do is put that thing in maintenance mode and enable them when the disaster recovery is there, or what I did at the customer, just adding the users to that published desktop at the moment so they don't see the icon, otherwise they see two icons in the install front. If you have the auto publishing for the desktop turned on, it doesn't work anymore because it's only working when you have one desktop available. So yeah, it's actually there's nothing comparable with the 6.5 version at this moment. Actually what I already said. So. In the future, what I did, I downloaded the tech preview of AppDisk, and a little bit inside there's actually something that's called XenDesktop 7. And as you can see, there are some improvements. You can now configure the application priority within the GUI, within the console, so that's nice, so you don't have the PowerShell commands anymore. The mechanism is the same. You give a priority, it's pretty fine, it's nice. You can also make more desktops in the GUI, but it's exactly the same stuff. You have two desktops with two different names and that kind of stuff, so that's not including anything new at the moment. Maybe there will be a new tech preview with some other stuff in it, I don't know. But at the moment, this is what it is in the tech preview. We saw this slide on CNG last May. We lost setup. That's nice. So I thought I can do something. At the moment, this is on the left. This is the console of the 7.7 tech preview. There's some difference in one application component tab. So that's nice. It's pretty difficult for you to see. So I thought, okay, we lost setup, application part is coming back. Why don't we rename the delivery group to a desktop? That would be nice. And use the machine catalogs as a kind of work group. So make the machine catalogs what they should be doing, put in machines in it, and assign the desktop or the published application via the machine catalog. Nowadays the application is going to machine catalog delivery group, assigning published application. So if you remove the delivery group or rename it, make it a desktop or an application, then the worker group functionality can be back in the product using the machine catalogs. This do a little bit different with the delivery group. And then I make a nice stuff, machine catalog, put it in, giving him sheets, filters. Yeah. And make something like this. make filters on the same stuff as in the load balancing policy, and create priorities for that, and the whole problem is actually solved, and we have reinvented the working group functionality in 6.5.
Thank you, Mick.
So yeah, if we look at XenDesktop 6.5 or IMA, of course we have local host cache, we have zones with that, and that also helps that if the IMA database will be unavailable for whatever reason, then everything will still function. Users will be able to log in, launch desktop's application, and so on and so forth. The only thing that will not work is make configuration changes to the farm itself. So I think we all know this. Today we have within 7.6, well, no more local host cache, of course, no more zones with that as well. We now have something referred to as connection leasing, which is sort of a nice to have. It's better than having nothing, but it's, well, not ideal. It helps under certain circumstances to launch assigned resources if the simple site database goes down, but it will not always work, as we'll see in just a few minutes. And the same as with IMA, no configuration changes are possible to the site if the simple site database is down. So with regards to connection leasing, it only works for assigned resources, not pooled. So if you're doing VDI with pooled PMs, you basically can't use connection leasing. If you lose the database, well, it doesn't work. Users can log in, can launch PMs. So if you look at connection leasing, how it works, a user will log in, he or she will get authenticated, enumeration will take place, and then at that time the first so-called XML file will be created. First, all the information gathered will be stored within the central site database, and from there the information will be replicated to the delivery controllers. So the delivery controllers themselves do not exchange any information with regards to connection leasing, which is sort of a misconception sometimes. The information replicated to the delivery controllers will be stored in an XML file format, and this first file will be generated on a per user basis and will hold all the resources that a user is entitled to launch later in the session. When a user launches a resource, a desktop or an application, for example, multiple XML files will be created. Again, first the information will be stored within the database, replicated over to delivery controllers before the XML files will be created. And there will, for example, be an XML file for each icon, for each desktop and application. There will be an application XML file, a desktop XML file, and probably the most important one, there will also be a launch XML file, and that will hold the information of the machine where the resource is last successfully launched. This information will be stored for 2 weeks by default, which is configurable, of course, so you can set it to a higher or lower number of days, for example. And then if connection leasing kicks in, if it becomes active, and it will only become active if all the delivery controllers are unable to communicate with the central site database. So if you have 10 delivery controllers, for example, and only one can communicate with the central site database, the others can't, then connection leasing, well, it won't happen, it won't kick in, it won't become active. So you just have to deal with that one delivery controller at that time. But when it becomes active, it will use the information stored within the XML files to show the icons of the application's desktops, and it will use the information stored within the launch.xml file to connect up to the machine where the resource was last successfully launched, and then connect the user up to that machine. So the first drawback of this is that if that particular machine is down for maintenance or rebooted or taken out of the farm or whatever, then the user won't be able to work. And if that user makes use of an RDSH desktop session, for example, and within that session he or she will have all its or their applications, then, well, the user can't do his or her work. So that's the first drawback. And I won't go over all the bullets here, but you see that there's a lot of stuff that stops functioning or will only partly function when connection leasing becomes active. So, for example, load balancing, of course, will not work because it's based on the XML files. If you're using scripts based on SQL information, of course, they won't work. No lingering, pre-launch, that kind of stuff. And of course, no pooled. So I thought, first of all, let's build sort of a GUI for this as well, because there isn't that much that you can configure with regards to connection leasing. But if you have to edit the registry in most cases, and a lot of admins do not like to do that. So it should be quite easy to do, I guess. And then secondly, I thought, well, maybe it's time to come up with, well, sort of local host cache functionality again, like we have within 6.5. But of course, it doesn't have to be the exact same setup. It doesn't have to be a local database, for example. So I thought maybe it's possible to create a replica of the database in memory of the delivery controllers. Because today there are already a lot of products, well, sort of working like this, and I'm no programmer, so I don't know how much work this would be or if it's possible at all. But I thought, well, this should be an option. And then memory is cheap, it's fast, and if you look at the average database size of today's sites, then even the biggest environments that I've seen, we're only talking about a few hundred megabytes, so that's not an issue. And then, for example, if a data controller or delivery controller needs to be rebooted, then of course the replica needs to be rebuilt in memory. But since the delivery controllers will always be, or in most cases, will be close to the database server, for example, in the data center themselves, so that won't be such a big issue as well. And if some of the functionality that Wilco was talking about earlier, and as we've seen or heard in the presentation that Nick did yesterday with the CTPs, some of it is coming back within 7.7 and later releases. So if that comes back as well, we can create sort of subsites. I was thinking, because of course I didn't know all this, that the information that the zones were coming back within 7.7, or that they're already back within Workspace Cloud. So I thought, let's bring back the zone functionality as well, just as with local host cache, but perhaps call them subsites or whatever. And then we can have remote workers as well. With workers, I mean XenDesktop servers. With a local delivery controller as well. The workers can communicate with the DC on the remote location, just as with the data collector setup, basically local host cache. And then that information can be replicated back to, well, the central site database incrementally every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. Configurable, of course. And then if one of those delivery controllers needs to be rebooted, then the replica needs to be rebuilt as well. And you don't want to have a few hundred megabytes then go over the line right away once it's rebooted or comes back online, or perhaps if a delivery controller is added on that side. So we might need to come up with well, a replication mechanism, sort of a background server, so that can be done incrementally as well. And then, of course, this could potentially work for pooled as well. So, yeah, that's basically what I came up with regards to the thinking cap on this topic.
And probably the subsites is probably needed because the delivery controllers at the moment don't communicate with each other, so there's no direct communication between the delivery controllers. So if there no database is available, there should be some way that the delivery controllers know what the other one is doing. So probably the multi-site is requirement or something like this.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, the database is holding session information.
Yeah, that's holding everything actually.
Yeah, so if it's in memory and if that server goes down, then you potentially lose session.
There should be communication between the delivery controllers to make something like this possible. Yeah.
Well, in most environments I see they have the SQL database high available, or use a dedicated platform for the databases running, for example, XenDesktop, XenDesktop, stuff like that. But how many use cases are there where the database would actually go down and the complete environment would be down? Is anybody using a single SQL instance, for example?
No, but even with
connection failures, I don't think
connection failures, and even with HA setup for SQL, it goes wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And that's the same reason why they came up with the web interface tweak I was talking about earlier, because a lot of bigger companies, they all rely now on that single SQL instance or multiple SQL instances, but the database has become very important in this way. So that's yeah.
It's kind of basically like RES relationer.
something like that.
Yeah.
We need some way of catching you on a local host, maybe.
That's a good idea, Chris.
I love host space. A little bit out of scope of XenDesktop, but because PVS is used a lot in XenDesktop side. The past, yeah, I've needed to find somebody. It was still on my PC actually. I searched on the internet and I found three images. They were on my site. Okay. I'm not going to talk about this a little bit because high availability in Arnhem was a different license and the setup it was pretty easy, but it was a lot of money. A lot of money. Currently, looking to PVS, can create multiple sites. Probably you all know, but I come with a lot of customers that don't know that those sites are completely independent of each other. So it's nice if you have two sites, you have two servers on it, but the device collections, the target device on one side will never communicate with the other side. So yeah, the mechanism between sides, there's no failover of load balancing. There is a way of load balancing built in PVS, subnet affinity. What you're doing, you're creating two VLANs with two different subnets, put the PVS server in the same subnet as your target devices, and with the subnet affinity you can arrange load balancing and failover. When you're using best effort. Within best effort, machine boots up, the target device will look if there's a PVS server available in its own subnet. If it's so, yes, then it will connect to that one. If there are multiple, the normal load balancing will overflow from it's the least busy server. Is there no PVS server available in his own subnet? He will check if there are more PVS servers in this site on another subnet, and he will connect to that one. Fixed is doing the same, but the downside is that Fixed is there's nothing in my own subnet affinity, then I do nothing, so there's no load balancing, but it's just putting in. So with best effort you can do load balancing and failover in PVS. I looked at PVS 7.7 preview 3, didn't see anything new in this part at this moment.
There's more coming.
Yeah, it's something with 3 letters or something, CTP, so nothing new here at this moment. So I'm putting up my thinking cap again, and my perfect Photoshop possibilities. We could do two ways. You could say that you can build in something like a failover site, so you can say this is my primary site for my device collection, and if no PVS servers are available on this site, failover to one of the other sites. That's a possibility. Just deciding, I don't know how technical it is to build this. Maybe it's impossible, but it could be a possibility, so that you can build a failover site, a little bit like the same stuff. We've seen a little bit more practice is this one. It's using the same mechanism, because it's pretty working fine, the best effort methodology. No only has one downside, and if you have more than 2 VLANs, or 2 of me subnets, 7 or 8 something. If there's no PVS server in his own subnet, then he's failing over to one of the others, and you cannot set, okay, this one priority 2, priority 3 or something like that. So that can be if you have 7 or 8 sites. I don't refer to particular customer. It can be happy that he's coming from the north completely to the south. Well, there is in the middle also a data center available. So I create a little priority thing. Where you
Hij stond er al.
die was already there. You can make it, I told him, and make another nice screen with priority stuff. So you can put in priority that you can put in VLANs, this subnet first, this subnet second, and that kind of stuff. It would be pretty easy to do, I think, and it would make the last certain. And this is working pretty fine. Yeah, quicker than we thought.
Quicker, yeah.
So, questions. Do you think we are met with our possibilities? Do you have other things in mind that could work? Speak up.
Well, if you talk about thinking caps, at the moment if you have a V-disk that you have in the store that stretches across multiple sites, and then you have to register it at each site, and then you can see, okay, for each site you got an entry in the store, so you see the disk 4 times.
Yes.
You edit one, the others get updated as well.
Yeah.
And you have to copy it. Would be nice if they can, if it would be just down to one disk, and you can edit and put a check mark for each site that is available.
Yeah.
That's already fine storage.
Yeah. I totally agree with what you're saying, but I've never used that mechanism because it's complicated and doing strange stuff with that. So I'm always making a different V-disk store for a different site. So,
yeah, I have to. I don't like it, but sometimes you can.
That would be nice, also a nice addition. Yeah.
Well, Citrix have a way of doing it with Melia.
Yeah, they are working on Melia and Symbolic. Yeah.
Well, I was about to say it and run out.
Actually, just wondering whether this is not adding something like running PVS, the offline database access. you just enable the offline database access, and it's just a click and just restart of the service, and on XenDesktop side, because I had sometimes some problems, mirroring whatever database availability. That's why I think we need something like that.
Yeah, okay, so you would like the offline database a little bit less,
Access
as Bas mentioned. The difficulty is that delivery controllers don't talk to each other. PBS services talk to each other, so they know what's happening. So, but yeah, something like that. But it's
PBS can do, XenDesktop can do.
Maybe. It is a different architecture, so it's technical, a little bit different.
So the first thing that needs to be changed is that delivery controllers can be able to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
It's just something you don't want, that's what you get rid of.
A question about replicating the VDisks on the HA files between the two PBS servers. Most of the times we use EFS replication, but isn't that something that should be built into PBS?
They're doing something with symbolic.
That's what Geneva just said. There's something with Melio.
Melio and symbolic is investing that part, so they're building that. Yeah.
Okay, so no more questions, then thanks very much for attending.